Welcome to Sustainability Soundbites, presented by E and E Leader. Indiana seeks review of NIPSCO reliability spending. Indiana's response to the prolonged Gary blackout is moving beyond restoration. State officials now want regulators to examine how NIPSCO prepared for the storm and whether previously approved reliability investments were used as intended. Indiana Governor Mike Braun has directed the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor to file a complaint and petition the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission to investigate Northern Indiana Public Service Co., expanding scrutiny beyond how quickly it can restore power after the destructive August 11 storm that left hundreds of thousands of customers without electricity. The requested review would examine NIPSCO's storm preparation, vegetation, and right-of-way maintenance, and whether funding previously approved by the IURC for infrastructure and reliability improvements was used as intended. There is currently no finding that NIPSCO improperly used those funds, but the request changes what comes next. The question is no longer simply why restoration in Gary took nearly 2 weeks, but what NIPSCO had done before the storm arrived. Indiana wants regulators to follow the spending. Braun's office said residents deserve to know whether money approved for infrastructure improvements was spent as intended, and separately said NIPSCO management had failed to deliver adequate solutions even as crews on the ground performed well. That distinction matters because utilities do not necessarily wait for a full rate case to begin recovering infrastructure costs. Indiana's Transmission, Distribution, and Storage System Improvement Charge, or TDSIC, lets utilities recover approved costs tied to eligible infrastructure projects through periodic rate adjustments, and NIPSCO's current infrastructure program operates under that framework. Gary now presents regulators with the other side of that arrangement, determining what ratepayers receive from investments approved partly on reliability grounds. Vegetation management moves into the regulatory review. NIPSCO has identified trees as a leading source of outages on its system, and the August 11 storm combined extreme winds with saturated soil, bringing trees and limbs into electric infrastructure throughout northwest Indiana. Winds reached 99 miles per hour at Gary's Chicago International Airport, but NIPSCO's vegetation practices were already evolving before the storm. Regulatory testimony in the utility's rate proceedings had addressed whether its existing tree trimming cycle was keeping pace with growth, and NIPSCO had been moving toward a shorter cycle and increased spending. Braun wants that maintenance history examined as part of the broader review, a scrutiny of cost allocation that echoes how Georgia regulators are separately examining whether utility cost claims match customer experience. That does not establish that vegetation management caused the duration of Gary's outage. A proposed class action lawsuit makes similar allegations, which NIPSCO disputes. A regulatory proceeding, however, could provide something the litigation has not yet produced: a detailed comparison between NIPSCO's maintenance commitments, approved spending, and actual work performed. The state's concerns extend beyond preparation. As restoration stretched into a second week, NIPSCO brought in additional contractors and mutual assistance crews, and Indiana mobilized state resources, including National Guard personnel, to help clear more than 350 routes for utility access. Gary Mayor Eddie Melton has questioned whether enough crews were mobilized early in the response, and Braun separately called on NIPSCO to bring in additional resources. Those criticisms have not established that insufficient staffing caused the extended outage, but they raise a question regulators may eventually weigh when evaluating resilience more broadly, since utility planning assumptions across the country are already being revisited for reasons beyond physical infrastructure alone. A storm producing 99 miles per hour winds can overwhelm infrastructure even when a utility has made legitimate reliability improvements, and a 2-week restoration alone doesn't prove those earlier investments failed. But as utilities seek larger amounts of capital for modernization and resilience, regulators may increasingly need to distinguish between money spent, infrastructure installed, and resilience actually delivered, a distinction Indiana now appears ready to test. Interested in a Soundbite sponsorship? Contact our team to learn more. Thank you for listening.